Hey, what's up? So in this video I'm going to go over Lock and Key's in Battalions Go, issues number 2 and 3. I made a video a long time ago on part 1 and meant to make this video soon afterwards, but just never got around to it. So with the Lock and Key Sandman crossover just finishing up, I finally made some time. So I'll finish up this arc and then I'll move on and cover the crossover. So a quick refresher, we are in the golden age of the comics, taking place in the early 1900s, so it's a whole different Locke family from the main comic or the show, if that's what's brought you here. The head of the family is Chamberlain Locke and his wife Fiona. They have 3 children, John, Mary, and Jean. They lost a son named Ian. That was covered in the 2nd issue of the Golden Age series, Open the Moon. In part 1, Jonathan attempts to enlist in the Canadian military to fight the Germans in World War I. America had not yet entered the war. Being obviously too young, the recruiter is hesitant to let him sign up, and then Chamberlain snatches him out of the office using the Anywhere key. And anticipating that he would be stopped by his father, he used the music box key on his mother to hypnotize her so he could get access to the Vault of Shadows, where all the most powerful keys were secured. John, he takes the crown and the key of shadows that gives him the power to command the Shadow Army. He takes the Tempest Fugitive key to become older. He takes the Angel key to fly, and he's got the Matchstick key to start fires. And then obviously he brings the Anywhere key so he can transport himself to the war front, which is going to be Belgium, and then that's where part 1 ended. So part 2 opens up from the German perspective. We see the remains of soldiers who were killed by their own chlorine gas. The German soldier William Veit reports the deaths to an officer, Uber Lieutenant Murnau. I think I'm pronouncing that right. That's a name I'm assuming Hill got from the director Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau. He directed Nosferatu and The Last Laugh. And then later on, Will even calls the lieutenant a vampire. So after Veit objects to the lieutenant about the use of poisonous gas, which is prohibited by the Hague Convention, he just sends him off to investigate reports about shadows walking around at night. So Will and his brother Henrik, they have to go question these troops, and almost a dozen men report seeing walking shadows at night, which we know is Jonathan using the Crown of Shadows. Alright, so the 2 brothers suspect that the men have been drinking, so they decide to sit down and have some liquor of their own. And then while they're chatting about morality, they actually spot Jonathan in a tree along with his Shadow Army. Jonathan uses the army to slaughter most of the Germans, and then in a twist he actually kills William with the Matchstick key in front of Hendrik. So this was actually a surprise to me, after we just spent half the comic getting to know him, and then there's been an effort to paint him in a positive light. So the surviving Germans flee, and then John is congratulated by his commander for taking out the Germans by himself. Henrik goes on to report back to Murnau about his brother in the Shadow Army, and then at that time the lieutenant just believes that they must have been breathing in some kind of hallucinogenic gas. Henrik's going to be put in for a medal, and then the Germans are going to launch a counterstrike the next day. They overrun the Canadians and their allies with the help of poisonous gas, severely injuring John. He's going to use the Angel key to fly to a nearby cottage, and then he's going to use the Anywhere key to transport himself back to Key House. Unfortunately, some German troops, including Henrik and Murnau, also gain access to the house, to their bewilderment, because they went from a war zone to a mansion. It's going to leave them kind of confused. Murnau's going to find the Crown of Shadows on the ground, and a confused Henrik is actually going to bayonet Jonathan's mother Fiona through the chest after she startles him. So part 2 is going to end on another big surprise. We have a severely injured or possibly dead Fiona. Alright, so part 3 is just going to pick up where part 2 left off. Jean's going to discover Fiona stabbed by Henrik and flee to her room. During this time, Lieutenant Murnau is going to start to figure out how to use the Crown of Shadows. Mary's going to attempt to heal John by putting him in the mending cabinet while fighting off a German soldier. And then after John is bayoneted by that soldier through the stomach, Mary uses the Dollhouse key to create a giant pencil to impale him. And then back in her room, Jean is going to use the teddy bear key to defend herself against another German soldier. And Murnau, he's going to be in full control of the Crown of Shadows at this point, and he's going to start to learn of all the other keys and other potential. Chamberlain's going to attempt to stop him using the music box, but he gets detained by a shadow when he drops it. Henrik, in an act of bravery, emulating his brother, knocks out Murnau with his rifle and drags him back through the door and back to the front lines, leaving behind the crown of shadows and Key House. We then see that Fiona did die from her wounds tragically, and Chamberlain tells John he wishes it was him that died. After the funeral, John and Chamberlain talk in the observatory, and John recognizes that the keys are dangerous and that they want to be used as weapons. He thinks that they should be sent to the bottom of the ocean, along with the Titanic, and also along with him. He uses the Anywhere key to open the door to the ship and commits suicide when he drowns in the water that comes pouring through the door. Chamberlain's going to use the Giant's key to save Jean and Mary and to shut the door to the Titanic. So part 3 is going to end with the poem When You See Millions of the Mouthless Dead by Charles Hamilton Sorley. That's where the title Untitled Battalions Go comes from. We're going to be left with the tragic image of 3 gravestones of Ian, Fiona, and Jonathan. And then finally, Chamberlain, using the stamp key, is going to receive a letter from Jonathan from hell, warning him to stay away and not to try to save his soul. Alright, so when I first read part 2, I was expecting a little more. I was kind of disappointed that everything seemed to happen so fast. I was hoping to see more of Europe, get into more of the history of the war, meet new characters that served with Jonathan from the Canadian military. I shouldn't have been surprised, though. The main comic was very similar. After I watched the show on Netflix and then read the comics, I saw there was a big difference in pacing, along with the comic being more graphic with blood and violence. On my second reading, it didn't seem as short, though. Part 3 actually felt a lot shorter on the second reading because so much happens in a short period of time. I would have liked to see more in terms of fallout and reactions to everything that happened. The back-to-back deaths of Fiona and Jonathan really caught me off guard. So this arc was basically written to set up the Sandman crossover, which Joe Hill really seems focused on. He was inspired to start writing because of Neil Gaiman, the writer of the Sandman series, and you could see in some of his tweets his excitement about being able to work with him. But the heartbreaking ending and the letter from hell is a good setup for the crossover. It matches the atmosphere of the gloomy Sandman universe, which I just started reading that this year. I'm almost finished now, so now at least I'll be able to recognize and understand the references and the characters in the crossover. Alright, so that's it for Untitled Battalions Go. I do wish it was a little bit longer, more fleshed out, but at the same time I respect Joe Hill for keeping it tight, keeping the action rolling, and then it does leave you wanting more. And it is a good setup for the Sandman crossover, which I'm going to check out next. I already read part 1. That was like, I forget how long ago. It seemed like a long time ago. Part 2 just came out on Tuesday. So I'm going to reread part 1, read part 2, and then hope to get up a video with a synopsis and my thoughts. But that's it. I'll see you guys later.